Robin, thank you for joining us.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks so much, Lauren.
Yeah, so we'll make sure to include links because there's so many incredible videos that you've produced, TED Talks. I know you've done multiple TED Talks as well. And I wanted to really to give you a chance to be able to get into your story. But I know that you are the president of Unleashed Productions and do really videos around cause-based documentaries. And just to kind of open up the discussion here, how did you get into that world, right? And specifically in the actual production of these videos, but then how did you sort of land here on this idea of storytelling and cause-based I don't know what the right word is, but sort of, that cause-based really just focus for where you are.
Yeah, I exactly because I got my MBA when I got out of undergrad, and I was working in the stock market. I never really thought that I would be a documentary filmmaker. Although photography has always inspired me, it's always been one of my hobbies.
Hmm.
And I thought maybe one day I can do visual storytelling. Maybe one day I'll be able to do something super creative like an actual documentary film. And that opportunity presented itself.
Yeah.
In 2010 when my daughter was in high school and she was running for her cross country team. And her coach, who was a famous coach in California because he had so many wins,
Mhm.
um, he was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease.
Oh,
And so there was a story that developed around that with how hard these young women worked to try to win and make Coach Tracy the winningest cross country. Actually, it was the winningest coach in all of California history,
oh
not
my
just for any
goodness.
sport, for any sport.
Wow, that's
And
impressive.
yeah, no, it's really impressive. And so, everybody was assuming this would be his last year coaching,
Right.
which in fact it was. And so ESPN and all sorts of different big production groups were there filming. And a
Mhm.
documentary filmmaker came to me and said, we're going to make a film
Right.
about this. So I was concerned about, anyway, that's how I jumped in. I got involved and I jumped in, and that was really fun. It was a hard project. It's like going to
Yes.
school,
Yes.
but I'm glad I did it. And after that, I just got the bug. And what I really loved was this idea of producing creative content for
Hmm.
the good of other people. So if there's something that you can, I didn't want to beat people over the head with any sort of a
Right.
lesson about unconscious bias or
Right.
the importance of diversity. I just wanted to find creative ways to bring these important societal issues to people's attention.
So have you been self-taught then along the way, or how have you learned? Because there's so many nuances to the art of being able to put together a story, actually producing it. I mean, there's so many components. How did you make that leap?
Yeah, I never went to film school, but I did have and continue to have amazing support and mentorship from the San Francisco documentary community, from
Mm.
people that I hire that have actually, have a lot more experience than I have or have been to film school. And I think that's a really important thing to build a team, not just of sponsors and mentors, but also of, people diverse ages, diverse backgrounds, that
Right.
can really offer input into this. So I self-taught in a way, yes. It's unique that I've come to filmmaking from a business perspective. So I wouldn't say this is happening to me right now, but for the past 12 years, fundraising for these films has been a little bit, maybe, I don't know, everybody says that I'm so good at it, or you make it look
Yeah,
so
yeah.
easy. Well, it's a lot of work, but because of my business background, I knew how to at least, contact corporate
Yep.
sponsors and try to engage people like that. So I come with a different perspective. And then at the same time, I didn't know any of the lingo on film sets, and I
Yes.
didn't really know how the whole idea of credits worked and everything. So I've
Yes.
relied heavily on people that have been making films their entire lives.
Mhm.
And I'm so grateful to all of the people that have helped me learn what I've learned.
Mm. I feel like that's more than half the battle though, just understanding the business side and then being able to speak the lingo of at least the business component. And then when you're able to marry that with also the creative component of actually the production side. So tell me a little bit more about how are you identifying people that say, yeah, we do want to, I don't know, you think you use the word, is it sponsor or support the creation of these productions? How are you going about that? And is it part of like a a bigger cause or a conference or a campaign, or kind of how does that come about?
Well, the idea for this was knowing that I had to raise for my for my second film, which was called
Yeah.
Code Debugging the Gender Gap,
Hmm.
um, that I needed about $850,000 to make the film. And that premiered in 2015.
Hmm.
So I looked at it like, what is the issue that we're covering? We wanted to expose the fact that tech wasn't diverse. It was mainly,
Hmm.
white engineers. Now it's mainly, say, white and Indian, for example. But in Southeast Asian, maybe. But I really was wondering, like, where are the women? I mean, these are really
Right.
good, well-paid jobs.
Hmm.
Women are just as good at science as men are. Where are the women? Are they actually keeping them out? Or anyway, and then I thought about, well, who are the companies that actually would care about this? Who are the
Right.
companies that stand to gain from a film coming out? Who are going to look good if they're behind this film?
Hmm.
And of course, the tech companies, right?
Yep.
So it was a little harder to get to companies like Google and Facebook and some of the really big companies, but I was able to bring in some amazing sponsors for that film, and through the corporate world, people that really cared
Right.
about those issues of diversity. And same thing when I made my next film after Code, I made a film called Bias, about unconscious bias.
Hmm.
And that film, I mean, I had all sorts of sponsors. IBM jumped in, Melinda Gates jumped in through Pivotal Ventures,
Hmm.
because people knew how important it was that we're all human. I wasn't pointing a finger at anybody. I put myself
Right.
in the film as a guinea pig. Um, but I was saying, look, this is really important. We
Yeah.
all, as humans, have bias. What are those unconscious biases blocking and thwarting in our lives, and how do we learn to mitigate them so that we can be more produce better products and become better companies?
Absolutely. Can you tell me more about Savvy, about the video that you, or the film that you produced there?
Yeah, so Savvy was inspired by the fact that I got divorced in 2016. And even though I have my MBA, I've had
Mhm.
really good schooling, I consider myself a pretty savvy person. My father was an investment counselor. Even though I have all that as a foundation, I still was ill prepared to manage finances on my own when I got divorced. And
Mhm.
I also was filled with some shame that I let myself be in a position like that,
Mhm.
right? Where I didn't really pay attention to what was going on with family finances when I was married.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
at age 50, I had to start over completely.
Mhm.
And I was lucky enough to be in a position where I had some support that was going to be coming my way for the next, several years. But I thought, boy, if I'm in this position, there must be so many more women that are even worse positions. And
Mhm.
how is it that if when you get divorced, everybody's supposed to land on equal footing? Why
Mhm.
is it that within 3 years, men have so much more, net worth and are on such a higher trajectory than women? And a lot of women who get divorced end up under the poverty level. So that
Mhm.
was really disturbing to me, and that's what made me want to make the film. We identified sort of the major issues that women face when dealing with money. So and not being intimidated by or not understanding investing,
Mhm.
having high credit card debt, not
Mhm.
understanding what sort of the APR is and how that can affect you,
Mhm.
credit scores and how important it is to have a good credit score so that you can rent an apartment or get a mortgage or lease a car.
Mhm.
Um, so student loan debt, of course, is huge, not just to women, but to women and men. Um, Financial abuse. Now, this is something that happens to all genders, but
Yep.
really specifically, financial abuse, women are targets, right?
Mhm.
And then the older community too, women who are widowed.
Yep.
Um, what happens to them if they're not financially savvy, if they're not prepared to take the reins
Mhm.
of their finances? So it's a film that's had a lot of exposure. I've taken it around internationally with the American Film Showcase. It's really been a very rewarding project, and yeah, happy that I got that one done.
So after you've completed these pieces, right, these documentaries, how are you getting them out to the public? Are there kind of organized functions where there's a watch and discussion around fundraising efforts, or where do you go to even watch as well? I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that piece and how people are using these as really I think to promote discussions, advocacy, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so I mean, once they're finished, my first sort of line of action is to apply to film festivals. And
Mhm.
not everybody chooses to go the film
Right.
festival route. It can be, it can be a lot of money to travel to them. But it's one way to win awards.
Hmm.
It's another way to get the film really out there into the world, just to give it exposure early on.
Yep.
So that was a fun way to do it. We did really well on the festival circuit with so far with all my films. They've won awards then we've had follow-up screenings at universities and different companies.
Mhm.
Um, Also, it's an opportunity for me then to promote private screenings. So
Mm.
I've had done really a robust schedule of curated private screenings of all of my films,
Mhm.
whether it's to huge companies like Google,
Right.
Microsoft, you know, Citibank, or even smaller organizations like the
Mhm.
YMCA of Milwaukee.
Mm.
Um, and then after that, I'm lucky enough to have been able to get distribution. I know some good distribution companies. I send the film around online and to a bunch of different, you can employ a sales agent if you want. None of
Right.
my films have sold outright. It
Hmm.
doesn't surprise me. The world doesn't really value cause-based films. They're looking for sexier films about drugs and sex
Right,
and
right.
and
Violence, all of that.
violence sells really well. True crime is
Yes.
a big one. And honestly, celebrity driven,
Yep.
Kardashian type
Yes.
films. So that's not the kind of films that I make. Um,
Hmm.
but I have been able to get distribution. My films, you'll find them on YouTube, on Amazon Prime, Google Play, on a lot of different platforms, Tubi, I think now too.
Right.
So the only one that I've held on to for now, although it is available internationally, is Savvy.
Mm.
And that's because I've just gotten a little frustrated with, the amount of revenue that comes back to a filmmaker once they have it out there on a major streaming platform. So Savvy's available on my website for $25 tax deductible donation. Um, and I'm doing it that way for now. We'll see what I do with it in the future.
When you had the private screenings, you had mentioned earlier that, you work with corporations where they've done that for their employees. Is that going through like an HR department, DEI initiative? And then is it a private screening and discussion? How is that sort of brought about? And I'm asking the question really because there could be folks that are listening that say, I want to bring this to my organization. And how do you prompt that conversation to be able to have a meaningful dialogue? And then those meaningful dialogues, that can often shape culture, that it can shape hiring decisions and org structure and all kinds of things and thinking. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about if there's a framework for that or what you're
Yeah.
hearing folks are doing.
Absolutely. Well, the good news is I work for myself, so I can be super creative.
Yes.
And generally, what happens is somebody has seen the trailer or watched the film at a conference, for example, and they
Mhm.
want to bring it to their company.
Yes.
So they'll reach out to me at finishlinefeatures.com on the website to inquire about a curated screening. And the price has gotten for nonprofits, the price is a little bit less, but at this point, we've been able to command pretty good pricing for a major corporation of $25,000 for an unlimited audience. And that includes my presence to curate a 60-minute post-screening discussion. So that works really well. And there are different ways that companies use this. Sometimes say, like a bank, let's just use Capital One Bank as an example,
Right.
who's a great client of mine. Um, they would want to bring me in. They want to have their invited guests, so not necessarily do an internal screening, but
Right.
also maybe this is a wonderful opportunity for them to say, let's invite the community. Let's invite our community and have this as a perk. So then
Hmm.
I always suggest that we fill up a panel with experts in the field. So if we're talking about women in financial independence. We're going to want to bring somebody in who's a wealth advisor,
Yep.
probably, somebody from the host company,
Hmm.
um, and then maybe somebody that's experienced hardship in a way onto the panel. And then I can either curate or I, as director, can just be a participant on the
Yes.
panel. But I have a discussion guide for every film that I've made that really helps people understand, it has a lot of content in it, but it also has instructions on the best way to set up a screening. And again, different times I've been to a lot of universities that do the same thing.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes companies want to do it all virtually, in which case I will get them a virtual screening link with a password. They share that with everybody in their community or whoever they want
Mhm.
to stream. Then we'll do an online post-screening discussion on sort of a mutual date. They can record that. They can't record
Yes.
the film, but they can record the post-screening discussion, put it up on their website, and then people can have access if they weren't able to watch the
Yeah.
film.
Sort of a separate training, if you will, for folks
Mhm.
to watch
Yeah,
later.
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my God. So if I enjoyed hearing too that you have a whole, it sounds like set of discussions too to be able to help to guide that conversation, even if it's independent or things to think about post the conversation. So I want to be mindful of time here. I feel like we could actually talk for quite a bit. And I do also want to call out the likability dilemma TED talk that you've done and would really also encourage folks to watch it. It's such an inspiration for, I think, hearing your words and how you're really able to just really own the stage and share some tough things that aren't always said out there. So, anything you want to say to that, or I think just kind of want to be able to give you the floor because it pairs so well with the cause-based work, and especially just coming off of the conversation about really empowering women in their finances.
It's interesting. Most people's journey onto the TED stage is first to do a TEDx and then to do a
Yeah.
TED. For me, it was the opposite. I was approached in 2017
Mm,
by the TED team when I was making my film Bias,
mhm.
and somebody had, I guess, seen a trailer or something, and they came
Yeah.
to talk to me about what was the most surprising thing that I'd learned when I was studying about unconscious bias. And I told them about how even artificial intelligence was biased, right?
Mhm.
And at the end of that discussion, I didn't really actually even know that I was pitching a TED talk to them at the time.
Yeah.
But they came back saying, "We love this. Can you do a TED talk?" So
Right.
that was, that's a crazy experience. I mean, it's
Yeah.
wonderful, but they set you up with all these different coaches and um, a speech coach, a writing coach, a design
Wow.
coach. It's a lot of work, but it's a really fabulous experience.
Mhm.
So after that, I mean, that one I think now maybe has 70,000 views or something, but it was very specific about can we protect AI from our biases?
Mhm.
And it was about 18 months later that somebody approached me to do a TEDx talk in Marin County. And I
Yes.
said, I've already done a TED. I don't want to go do that again. It's a lot of work. And
Right.
they said, we'd really like to have you. We'd really like for you to, is there
Yeah, yeah,
anything
yeah.
you'd like to talk about now? And I remember I was at the screening, I was going to be doing a screening that night at Indiana University, and they called once again and they said, we haven't received your application. Would you please
Oh,
apply? So I just sat down and I started writing about the microaggressions that women face and modern day sexism as in the view. And what what that really reminded me of was this likability dilemma that I
right.
had learned about from a really brilliant woman at Harvard named Iris Bonet.
Mm,
And so I called Iris and I said, "Can I have your permission to talk about the likability dilemma?" And she said,
right.
"Oh, absolutely." She's like, "Yeah, I think you should." And so that's really how I brought that into the talk. But what was interesting about this is that what we're talking about is microaggressions, right? I
Mm,
mean, present day, it's rare that you're going to have somebody in a corporate audience, slap a woman on her derriere and say,
yeah.
"Boy, you look good today, sweetie." I mean, that's
Mhm.
kind of things that happened in the Mad Men era
Right.
aren't really happening as much now.
Right.
But why are we still feeling these microaggressions of sexism? Why the little things like one of my examples in that talk is my being at a cocktail party and asking somebody what he did for a living. And he said, fintech.
Mhm.
I was interested. I said, really, what kind? And he looks at me kind of up and down and says, oh, it's complicated, right?
Mhm.
Completely dismissive. What, too complicated for me because I'm a woman?
Mhm.
Or I just think this is really
Yes.
interesting that he didn't intend to be dismissive. He didn't intend to be, you know, um, anyway, really, but it
Mhm.
was his unconscious bias that was just sort of assumed that as a woman, I probably wouldn't understand the intricate details of
Mhm.
his company or of what he was doing. And it's possible that that's true, but let
Right.
me decide and let me ask the questions afterwards, right?
Right. I know. Well, I'm thankful that you took up the opportunity to give that talk because it's really powerful, and I think it's really important for folks to hear that message and the courage to be able to stand up on the stage and say the things that you were able to say in such a fluid, thoughtful way. So I feel like we can have a whole separate conversation on that. So I do want to, again, just kind of round out our time and just also just give you another opportunity to say if there's anything that you want to share as far as maybe new projects that you're taking on or trends that you're seeing that are upcoming or things of that sort, just to share with folks.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about the film I'm working on right now. It's called Thaw, and
Mm.
it's about the rapidly rising trend of elective egg freezing and the future of fertility.
Oh,
You've probably,
fascinating.
yeah, you've probably
Wow.
heard that birth rates are dropping in the US. And for the first time ever, 2023, more women had their first children in their 30s than their 20s. Infertility is on the rise. 1 in 6
Mhm.
couples have a difficult time conceiving.
Mhm.
But it makes sense, right? I mean, we used to have babies when we were 15, 16. That's
Right.
historically, that's what biology wanted us to do. Now we're waiting into our 30s to try to get pregnant.
Mhm.
And we're having a really hard time doing that because our bodies weren't meant to work that way. And
Mm.
in a way, I guess you could look at it, we're out evolving evolution, right? So
Yeah.
what's the hacks for this? I mean, what can we do? And I also was struck by the fact that as young women, we spend half of our lives trying not to get pregnant.
Mhm.
Every time we talk to, a doctor, fertility doctor, they're telling us how to be careful, how not to get
Right,
pregnant, and
right,
not to
right.
get an STD. And then suddenly you turn, say, 35 or 36, and you try to get pregnant and you're having a hard time thinking, why didn't I know about this sooner?
Mhm.
So the idea of just awareness,
Yes.
how important it is to be informed about your fertility and maybe to, look into egg freezing early so that it takes the pressure off of your biological clock. The
Mhm.
problem, of course, is that it's very expensive and
Yes.
it's not that accessible. So we
Mhm.
need to find ways. Women are leaving the US to go abroad to have this done where it's cheaper. But it's a really interesting trend that I'm excited about. So if I can raise the finishing funds I need, I'm going to submit to Sundance by the end of the summer.
Oh, fantastic. Well, it's a topic that I think is very important, and you're right. It's definitely a, I don't know if the right word is trend, but it impacts number of people. So thank you again for your time, for just all the work that you're doing, be able to help promote these conversations, and I think more importantly, as you alluded to earlier, doing it in a way that's storytelling, to really be able to impact that social change, and ultimately to potentially change policy or culture or just climates that we're all in. So again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lauren.